start the clock.
Back on the internet, and I'm going to ask you the first question because I was just saying that you do not, as to follow up on our editorial, though, you do not have a photo ID.
That's true. Well, I do have a photo ID.
Or you don't have a driver's license.
But I don't have a driver's license, that's true.
Why don't you have a driver's license?
Well, I grew up in New York City, and I hate cars. So I try to avoid, certainly try to avoid driving one myself. And as you noted earlier on,
you don't need one in New York.
My people, you know, we travel mainly by other conveyances. For example, levitation, and
magic carpet.
Exactly. So, you know, never had
what are your people, genies?
Actually, they rubbed the lamp earlier today, and then kind of out I came and seersucker. It's sort of just the way I operate.
Oh, okay. Welcome our next guest, a wisp of smoke. Okay, Chelsea, for you, being the daughter of a Mormon, do you have any insight into Mitt Romney's religion and how it might impact his decision-making?
Yes, it's a farce, and it's a terrible religion, and you shouldn't follow it. Period.
What? That's it?
Well, it's made up. I mean,
is it worse than any other religion?
Any organized religion can be very harmful, but I think Mormonism is really, really ridiculous. I grew up with it, and I couldn't even look at my mom seriously for more than 10 minutes when she talked about it, until finally she just stopped talking about it.
It is ridiculous, even by the standards of religion.
It's improved millions of people's lives. It's built a tremendous. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the stability of Mormon families, if you look at just the flourishing institutions they've created, it's an amazing.
But they can't even drink alcohol.
But the Preston plant industry.
They can't have sex. They can't have alcohol.
There are a billion Muslims who manage just fine without drinking alcohol.
What about
they have fun and they kind of
coffee.
Well, they do drink coffee, but they, you know, but they.
What about Red Bull? Are they allowed to have Red Bull?
Just because the law under which Muslims, you know, purport to live says they can't drink alcohol doesn't mean they actually don't.
Exactly.
Same with Mormons.
Yeah, same with Republicans who have gay sex. But also,
there's plenty of Mormons who drink.
But the breast.
You think the Saudi royal family doesn't have cases of scotch?
But the thing is, I think that the Mormon Church, it's incredible the social welfare agencies they've created, just the tremendous achievement, the way that they've built an institution in a very chaotic world that has really been a source of solace and stability for a lot of people. I think that I just can't see being dismissive.
Okay, but they don't accept, unless you accept Jesus Christ as your savior in the Mormon religion, you go to hell. So you could be a great person, a huge philanthropist, you could live your life well, not be a philanderer, get married, take good care of your children, and go to hell. But you could be a rapist and a murderer and accept Jesus Christ, and then you go to heaven.
That's not just
religious commitments are based.
That's true, but that's what I took away from Mormonism.
Okay.
And you were in it. She was in it. So
okay, for Mark Cuban, when will the NBA successfully block the bulk of NBA players from going to the Olympics, and why would letting them compete every 4 years hurt the NBA so badly?
I don't know when it's going to happen, hopefully soon, because when you pay somebody $15 million a year and then they go and they work for NBC for free, that kind of gets under your skin.
That's a good point. It's a really good point.
Did the Mavericks have anyone on the team?
I won't let them. No, we didn't this year.
Then what are you bitching about?
I'm not bitching.
Did they want Turks? Did they want some?
No, Germans didn't make it, fortunately.
Oh, he would have played for Germany, right. They didn't even make it in the Olympics?
Nope, bummer.
Wow.
Did they in 08?
Yeah, they did, and I wasn't happy. But
okay. If the government raised your taxes, Mr. Cuban, would you still be a billionaire, still create jobs, and still invest in this country?
Absolutely. Yeah. They can take my taxes from 35 to 39%. I won't even notice it.
Right.
You know what taxes were in the 50s?
What?
In the 50s, 91%.
Yes. Absolutely.
All throughout Eisenhower.
Under Eisenhower, it was 91% because he was a commie.
You know what it was leading up to the...
even under Nixon, it was over 70.
Yeah, and leading up to the crash of 29, it was 25% for the whole 20s.
Right. I mean, I think...
and there are a lot more tax shelters.
The top 1/10,000th of this country makes 5% of total income. This is like end times imbalance. The notion that somehow they should be taxed less is crazy talk.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the reality. If you have enough money in the bank, If you have money in the bank, then your marginal tax rate doesn't matter. Either you're investing or you're not. You're not making decisions. I've looked at thousands of business plans. On Shark Tank, we see 20 a day. Not one single time have I ever had a discussion about taxes and making those decisions. Not once. They don't matter. Either it's a good investment or it's not.
Also, more wealthy people should come forward and say that they're willing to pay more taxes. I'm willing to pay more taxes, and I'm a Jew, so I'm willing to.
Well, you're a Mormon.
Yeah, I'm sacred too.
I'm every religion that comes up in this conversation. Bringing new ones up.
It's not about that. It's about how well the money is spent. That's the core question. If the money is being deployed effectively, I would have no problem.
No, I think it's about rich people wanting to hang on to their money.
Look, you don't know. You don't know how the Republicans are going to spend the money either. You have no idea.
Sure
You're
you
just
do.
hoping they send.
On defense.
They sent a case of $500 million to Iraq and didn't know where it went. That's exactly how that money was spent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have
Here's one for you, Peter. 14 years after the release of your first documentary, wow, this is a real fan.
Wow, no kidding.
Garbage.
That one person.
Your first Garbage.
The one.
There used to be a band, Garbage.
Remember
it
killed
Garbage?
us.
Shirley
Oh, it killed
Manson.
us.
Yeah, it killed you?
Yeah, because we had the name first, and then they came out and they used the same font, so it took all of our air away.
Oh,
I could have
fuck.
killed
Wow.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah. Right, Shirley somebody was the lead.
Shirley Manson.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, they were good.
Okay.
They were really good.
Do you think things are better or worse when it comes to how Americans deal with waste?
Oh, much better.
Much better.
Much better. Yeah,
Because we recycle and...
Yeah, the recycling, when we started Garbage back in '89, recycling in LA was not even the little orange cart,
Right.
thing, and now you got the big push carts. But right now, waste is considered a fuel. Like,
Right.
Waste management is usually looking at every landfill they have and saying, that's a mine. And so there's going to be wars and fights over waste before too long, because it's all organic carbon. So everyone's fighting for, I want to make fuel with that waste. Oh, I want to do something else with that waste. I would be buying a lot of landfills if I were you.
But,
I bought one, and
Yeah.
we're converting into land to be used for data centers.
There you go. But
nice.
you converted it.
dating centers?
Data centers. Because you can convert all the garbage
go on a
into
date,
power,
a
which
landfill.
feeds the data center.
Exactly.
Well, now we need that to happen with water use, because that's an area where the amount of waste is
Oh,
just
there's
a
some
scandal,
amazing
and
stuff
it's
with
really
water
tragic.
right now. There's a group of people that are working on treating municipal waste water, so that you can actually take all the water that we're using in our sewage system, save the water, compost the human stuff. It's taking care of the bacteria. It's taking care of all the drugs that everyone's
The
taking.
human stuff.
Yeah, all the human stuff. Use that compost for the stuff I was talking about. Turn on the soil and save
Soylent Green.
a crazy amount of water.
Green, it's people.
There's a guy
Spoiler
that-
alert.
That was
Chelsea, this is for you. M. Sturgis asked, do you think Paul Ryan is going to be able to attract women voters because he's young and good looking, or is he a turnoff the minute he opens his mouth?
wow.
See Sarah Palin.
I got it.
The male version of Sarah Palin. I mean, he's not as stupid as she is, but I mean, who is?
He's not as good looking as she is, though.
He's not that good looking, but she wasn't that good looking either. She was prettier than most politician women.
Yeah.
I mean, political women, whatever the appropriate phrase for that is. But no, I don't think so. I mean,
But I've heard a lot about how good looking is. Now,
Politrixes.
I'm not...
Politrixes? Okay, gotcha.
All it takes is one glance into what Paul Ryan has voted on as far as women's issues. This is the guy that put forward a personhood
Right.
amendment on the floor of Congress,
Right.
who has systematically tried to defund Planned Parenthood. Any lady that looks at that, I don't know how she's attracted to Paul Ryan, despite the fact that he does P90X.
He's a great ad for
Whatever that is.
Women who are pro-life, I mean, might feel differently, right? I mean, they exist. They're out there, and they have strong convictions too.
They're doing P90X too.
What is P90X?
It's a game that he plays, or no, it's a workout video.
Ultra intense
workout video that he bought on what is that?
Infomercials.
Infomercials, yeah.
Not that I have one. No. I certainly don't use it, so.
Let's go put some money in a landfill.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next week, folks. And I'm going to give you guys the first shot to respond to the editorial, because I'm sure you were sitting there stewing as I was saying that the Republican Party is the party of fantasy. But your rebuttal?
It's a speech I've heard Republicans give about Democrats my whole life. So, you know, I mean, that's the debate we have, right? Which side is being fiscally fantastic?
I know, but one side more has the facts on their side. I mean, if you don't believe in global warming, then you're going against every scientist in the world.
Except that temperatures haven't increased for the last 10 years.
That's completely wrong. See what I mean about facts? They have complete. It's been the hottest year ever. Like 8 of the last 10 years are the hottest years ever. Where are you getting this? Where are you getting this?
It's the data.
Seriously, it's in the paper every day. I'm not trying to make funny. I'm just saying we must not be reading the same language. You don't really think global warming is happening and man-made?
No, I don't.
But there's climate change.
Okay. But you do. But do you concede that 90-something percent of scientists do think that?
There's a lot of politicization of the climate science.
Yeah. No, there isn't.
There absolutely is.
I hear this all the time. The scientists are paid off. That's why. Yeah, that's why scientists are buying mansions and wearing fur.
I'm saying there's a lot of politicization. Talk to my old professor at MIT, Richard Lindzen. He's one of the people who audits this data pretty considerably, and he makes a persuasive case that it's not persuasive.
I just keep looking for the strings that are moving around.
No. You know what you really need to do, I think, is if you could get both sides of this to agree, well, okay, who are the references that we're going to say? Who are the gold standards? Instead of arguing what those...
The gold standards are the climatologists, the scientists, and they're all on the same side. And by the way, 20 years ago, your party did not deny it was happening. That wasn't the position of the Republican Party in the Bob Dole era. It was cap and trade, which is now the Democrat position. What happened? How did we go from it's happening to now it's not happening at all?
Well, there's a couple of different points, right? There's temperature variability and what's causing that, right? So is it being caused by man? We don't know. It might be being caused by man. And then there's the question of if it is being caused by man, if it's true that computer models by climate scientists can predict to the second decimal point in 2053 that temperatures will increase by 0.5 centigrade.
No, that's not
what can we do about that? What are are we going to spend $100 billion?
You would say that there is, you suggested that there was variability. So you do say that there is climate change. You might not say that there's global warming, but you do say that there is climate change happening.
Global temperatures go up, they go down. There's accuracy issues.
We're getting more extreme. We're getting, scientists will go to the Arctic.
Scientific consensus, though. I mean, we're only humans. We will never have a perfect answer because there will be no God who comes down and says, this is the answer. So we can only go by consensus, which means like 100 years ago, everyone didn't believe in Darwin's theory. And then there was an overwhelming consensus.
We bled people because we thought
so if we have over 90% of the people who are trained in the field, so it's 90% of the like 0.001% of the people who are knowledgeable. Isn't that overwhelming?
Bill, I don't...
I actually think that the media here have a responsibility because the tradition has been for the anchors to just basically present both sides of the global warming story. So those who don't believe on one side and those who believe on the other, as though there's an equivalence.
That was Thomas Friedman had the great line. He said if they came out for one side said the world was flat, the headline in the paper would be, two sides disagree on size and shape of world.
Yeah, and Bill is right. I mean, the overwhelming number of scientists in this field will say that there is climate change happening and that the globe is warming, that waters are rising.
And it was man-made.
And that it is man-made, and that there is a dispute, even as Paul Ryan has said, there is a dispute about what you can do about it. And there is some dispute about what you can do about it. But the facts, according to the science, are... You will find some scientists who disagree, but the vast majority will tell you that there is global warming happening.
And I think the whole point... The things we can do about it would be great for our economy, too. Alternative sources of energy are not just good for...
All I can say is your rebuttal has not convinced me.
But what Ariana's saying, I agree with. If you move to, what are some of the solutions? Because everybody wants less air pollution, and, we can get together on a lot of these things alternative energy. I still think we should drill our own doggone oil, and I don't want to take this opportunity to remind you that when Obama was elected in January '09, gas was $1.83 a gallon. That would be cheap for me to remind you at this point.
But is it really, is that the president's fault? Is he personally out there?
I think he's drug on a lot of permitting.
Out there with the long pole in front of the station, moving the... Come on.
Put it this way. He sure would claim credit if it went down $1 a gallon.
But Jack, trace it back to me. Trace it back to me how it's his fault. Just give me that thread.
Making the permitting process more cumbersome, taking longer in the duration, and issuing less permits. I mean, there is a supply and demand. If you choke off the supply,
but he's the one who opened up more drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. The liberals hated him. Remember that? They all hated him for that. It was right before the thing blew up in the Gulf. Right?
Actually, one of the main reasons we've had a spike in oil prices. One of the main reasons we have a spike in oil prices is because there's the possibility of some kind of war with Iran and instability in the Middle East. The person that has been saying, tamp this down, it is irresponsible to talk about strikes against the Iranians, is actually in the White House. He's...
Supply and demand, you increase your supply and the price is going to go down, and he has not done anything to increase the supply.
Actually, the supply has gone up under him. That's another fact. It has.
At the macro level. So, if we really believe that industrialization is the cause of global warming, then what you're really saying is Africa can't become part of the developed world. You're saying that India shouldn't be a developed country because if Africa develops, India develops, that's what environmentalists are doing. They're saying
I'm not following this argument.
Countries can't become part of the developed world because if they do, they're going to pollute more. They're going to consume more fossil fuels. They're going to use more energy. They're going to do all the things that the environmentalists oppose. So what we're really saying is we're consigning all of them to poverty. We're not going to allow them to become prosperous countries.
But wait, this is a false argument. Like, if we don't use fossil fuels, you're consigned to poverty. That's ridiculous.
You think solar panels are going to fuel the world energy demand?
They will someday, of course. Why? It's like saying 100 years ago, do you think cars are going to replace horses? How ridiculous. Of course they are.
Until solar energy is magical unicorns that can power the world's energy,
it's not magic. Well, first of all, it's happening in other countries around the world. But China is doing it already. Of course, India is doing it already.
It's not efficient. That's why Solyndra went bankrupt.
Nothing is efficient at first.
It's the most subsidized form of energy there is. And the least, I know Democrats hate to hear it, but the least subsidized energy is fossil fuel.
But the internet didn't come into existence perfect at the beginning.
I want to get back to what Ariana said because I found some level for agreement here.
Always looking, Jack. You gotta love Jack.
I don't want to be mad at my country anymore.
No.
But an all-of-the-above energy strategy is sound, and it has lots of political consensus. And, I have supported research at the University of Georgia for algae and for non-edible sweet potatoes. And, there's a lot of good things that are out there that we are investing in, but I think at the same time...
Algae?
Yes, sir.
Come on, that must be bullshit, right, man? I mean, if solar power's cuckoo, this guy is just off the rails with algae. Jack, what a hippie. Algae?
It comes out every now and then. But any plant that has sugar in it, you can get energy out of, and that's what Brazil's doing with sugarcane right now. So, there are things that we can do.
All right. We didn't get to one question, but it was fun. Thank you, folks. Thank you. Here we are on the internet. You missed some good shit already. Tom Wade asks you, Steve, what did you think of Woody Harrelson's portrayal of you in Game Change? I thought it was terrific.
No, it was a very, very strange experience. But I got to know Woody. He's a really nice guy.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, and
you don't know him like I do.
And he's a great guy. I mean, he's such a talented actor. I love his movies.
And if he can't ever do the next Game Change, you would step in for him?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Jim, what would you say to people who claim Politico has a conservative bias?
A conservative bias? We get it on both sides. People, when you're in the media, regardless of what paper people say, you're from the left or you're from the right. Our whole thing has always been to be down the middle. I think there's plenty of noise on the left and the right. What there isn't a lot of, and it gets to the Baltimore paper, it gets to what's happening in New Orleans, there's not a lot of just reporting, just fact-out reporting. We now have 200-some employees. Of those, 130 are involved in the editorial process. It's all, because of the name, obviously, very focused on governance in politics. And there, you know, if you are full of it, like, people are going to know.
Follow-up question, sort of. How do you feel about the fact that New Orleans will now be the largest U.S. city without a daily newspaper? That's your city.
Well,
they went to 3 days a week, right? The Times, the New Orleans Picayune, didn't they go to?
Right. I mean, they're online, but they're going to a printed paper.
3 days a week.
Exactly.
I mean, that's crazy because there are 7 days in a week.
Well, I'm not particularly wedded to the idea of newsprint. I feel like cutting down trees and throwing them on people's doorsteps is an anachronism and has been for some while. You know, the delivery system is going to be digital. What I am wedded to is the idea of a newsroom, is the idea of paid professional journalism, which I don't believe the amateur hour can replace what high-end journalism is and should be.
You're not calling him the amateur hour, are you?
No, no. Being online is no. Being online, being in print, that's not the issue. The issue is, if we're going to digital, can you create enough of a revenue stream to pay the reporters to cover the beats, to have a beat structure so that there's some schnook covering the zoning board for long enough so that when they slip something in the agenda and they're going to put a strip joint next to your, not that it's a bad thing, but when they're going to put a strip joint next to the elementary school, you know it in advance before it starts getting built. You know, everyone thinks...
Don't wreck the plans Christine and I have for after the show. This is a question for you. If you believe in limited government, Christine, why should the government intervene on social issues like gay marriage and women's reproductive health? I'm sure you've answered that one before.
Right. I've always said on those issues that they're state issues. And on the issue of...
How does that change it? I mean, it's still about the government, whether it's a state or federal level, and
because it comes to determining when you have your rights infringed upon, the person who decides that should be someone who is a part of the community and who is going to be held accountable to those decisions.
Wait.
So, no, I mean accountability. I have a whole chapter in the book called The Freedom
who the person is who's infringing my rights. I mean,
no, because the reality is there is a freedom food chain. And this is what sets me apart as a conservative from a libertarian, because I do believe that the government should have some laws.
I consider myself a limited government conservative. I don't understand the people in our party who think it is okay for the government to mandate a medical procedure to a woman. I mean, You have law after law in this country and state legislators, these efforts, I'm pro-life, but, if it's a legal procedure in the country, how does the state mandate an invasive medical procedure?
Well, the state doesn't mandate
relationship.
The state doesn't mandate it.
Right. Many states are trying to.
I mean, the Democrats are trying to say that by their moves this past week to unlimit all restrictions on this very risky procedure.
And if I could, actually come in on your side here for a minute. See, I always separate abortion with the other social rights issues that the conservatives talk about, like gay rights. To be against gay rights, to me, is just stupid, because it just comes from the Bible.
I support gay marriage.
But I always say you do not have to be religious to be against abortion. I mean, I'm pro-choice, but I get it that there are people who believe, because it's undeniably a life it's not a life that's born yet, but it's undeniably becoming one. I get that that is an issue. You do not have to, you mean atheist and be pro-life.
I've covered the Baltimore City Council, and I've even had a little bit of a hand in covering the Maryland State Legislature. And if you think like the intellectual power of those bodies is in some way superior or more nuanced than, say, the Congress of the United States.
I've met a lot of congressmen.
That's just nothing but...
It couldn't be lower.
That's just nothing but I don't have the stomach to interfere in this person's life. So I'm going to
I don't
pass the
understand.
buck.
Well, you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach
but
to
I don't understand
policy.
this basic philosophy that we can do things on a state level. Like, this is the whole argument with Mitt Romney and Romneycare. Oh, it worked in Massachusetts where people have gallbladders, but federally it wouldn't work because in Kentucky they don't. I mean, people get sick the same in every state. People have abortions or not in every state the same. Why does it work on a state level and not
Well, first of all, we have the 10th Amendment, and the 10th Amendment protects state sovereignty. So,
well,
you know,
let's set the 10th Amendment.
Because our founders understood that accountability
but
is
that
what is
doesn't
going
really
to preserve
answer
our
my
freedom.
question. I mean, the 10th
But when
Amendment
you're
says
talking
everything not enumerated specifically to the federal
belongs
government
to
goes
the
back to the states.
Right, and these certain things are not enumerated
Well, what about
in the
Defense,
Constitution.
what about the Defense of Marriage Act, then, which would seem to be an abrogation of the 10th Amendment because marriage has always been defined at a state level?
Right. I agree. And that's why we have it, because when it comes to that issue, the states can define a civil union, a domestic partnership, and then the states can determine how that is enacted. And what we see happening all across the country is that issue of same-sex marriage pits the First Amendment with the 10th Amendment.
Let me ask you,
and for example, in cases like New Jersey, there are churches that have lost their tax-exempt status because they don't have civil union couples and things like that. And you can applaud because you think that's a good thing, but the church has the First Amendment right to define its own religion and define marriage according to its religion. And the 10th Amendment says the states will determine how these things are defined. And if you don't like what's going on in New Jersey, then you become a part of that.
What would you have done during the...
Read it and weep, 10th Amendment.
What would you have done during the civil rights movement? So what would you have done during the period when the civil rights movement was emerging? You talked about accountability at states' rights level. You needed a federal government that was going to allow people to fight and achieve their rights.
No.
This
There
would
were
not be a
so
more
many.
perfect union.
This was won. The civil rights war was won on the state level. Civil rights were won by people, by individuals getting up and speaking up.
Christine, you must know.
You needed a federal government to take on Bull Connor.
The civil rights movement started when the Republican Party was founded to end slavery.
I thought that was the 82nd Airborne.
Ended slavery.
I thought the 82nd Airborne.
I mean, you've seen that famous Norman Rockwell painting where the guy is escorting a little black child into the that's a federal troop. I mean, Kennedy, that's what cost the Democrats.
The 13th Amendment. The federal government, one of the enumerated powers of the federal government is to protect defense, both foreign and domestic threats. In that sort of situation, it's a domestic threat. You're talking about a whole movement that truly started when the Republican Party was founded to end slavery. And it was the Democrats.
That's true. The Republicans did end slavery. You got to give that to Lincoln. And the Republicans have been strongly behind the black man ever since. All right, we got to go. Thank you very much, everybody.
Real Time with Bill Maher. Ask Bill and his guests.
Okay, we're back, and we're going to ask the questions from the Internet. Salman, would you write the Satanic Verses today?
Fortunately, I don't have to because I already wrote it.
No, I think what they're probably asking.
I know what they're probably asking.
Eugene, what do you think would incentivize change in our approach to the war on drugs?
Well, I think if we found a way to remind the American people what a huge amount of money this is costing us, that you make profit simply by pulling back on this insane waste of money. We've spent $1 trillion in 40 years.
Right. And also that they're probably less safe, right, because the cops are going after drug stuff. And
when cops have to spend all their time breaking people for little petty arrests, they lose their focus on the real crimes that we should worry about.
Exactly. Chris Matthews, are you taking heat for being willing to call a comment racist sometimes before anyone else has raised the issue? No.
Everybody I've met who's African American has come up to me about 6 inches away from me and very personally said thank you. I met some people in Mozambique. I met some people in Jamaica. It is an international reality, and everybody feels it on that side of the racial divide. And it's disgusting that white people to whom the dog whistle is aimed refuse to acknowledge it. It is there. It's been part of our politics. We thought it was gone. It's back, and it's being used to get votes.
Okay. If profits are up for companies, shouldn't the results of their prosperity be more evident in the salaries of Americans?
You would think so, but as I said earlier, the labor share of the pie is the lowest it's been in 40 years. I think one of the reasons for that is that companies aren't investing in the U.S., they're investing abroad. That's why we need to get more competitive at home.
Yeah, I mentioned trickle economics a couple of times in the show when it came up. Don't you think that worked only once? You know, when Reagan brought the rates down from 70% to 28, right. Of course that was going to goose the whole thing. Right. But you kind of shot your load. I mean, you kind of can't do that every time. Now that we're at 36, I mean, really, what would it change?
I would hope the common ground would be not only to look at just the tax, but to look at the other things. The $1 trillion it costs a small business to comply with regulations, for example. Government's just too big, too oppressive, too complex. You start a little stand somewhere, you get a lemonade stand, you're an 11-year-old girl, and the guy comes and shuts it down from the local city because you don't have a permit. This kind of stuff has got to stop. And that's happened in a lot of places. You know,
I'm going to push back. I think that you can cut red tape, but I think if you talk to older people in business, I mean, someone like Warren Buffett, when tax rates were far higher, growth was also higher, too. I just don't think that entrepreneurs are going to leave because of tax rates and red tape.
The corporate rate they are leaving now, as you pointed out, the corporations are investing overseas because the corporate rate is the highest in the industrial world. Sweden is
they're investing because that's where the growth is.
And why is it the growth? Sweden just cut their corporate rate to 22%. Ours is 35% in socialist Sweden.
We should streamline taxes. We should get rid of loopholes that people who should be paying more taxes should be not taking advantage of. And I think that we also should lower tax rates on earned income, to go back to your point about the people that are working really hard in this country, not lazy people.
There's common ground.
Let's lower taxes here and make people up here.
Close the loopholes, lower the rates. That's exactly actually what Romney is saying.
But they've studied this, and regulations are not hindering the economy. It was like...
They are.
No, it's fundamental growth. You've got to make the U.S. more competitive. That's what it's about.
So how do you do it?
Well, you've got to invest, and this is happening at the local level. Cities that come together. I just came from Columbus, Ohio, actually, last week. There you've got a Democratic mayor who convinced a bunch of Republican city fathers to do a tax hike, first in 27 years. The city is now booming. They invested in infrastructure and education. This is what we need to do at the national level.
I mean, it did work under Clinton. You got to admit that. The 93 tax hike under Clinton, which was only 3% on the richest people. It's not exactly socialism to raise taxes 3% on the top 1%.
In this Romney thing. Romney gives a speech because it was a good speech down there in Tampa, and he had a line in there about, I'm just going to help the American family. I'm not going to stop the sea level from rising. Well, then he told the joke again some later on. The trouble with the premise of that, their jokes are fine, but the premise of that joke was science is a joke. New York City is now retrofitting its subway to deal with the higher sea levels that are coming. Everybody knows it's happening. We've got 20 or so countries down in Southeast Asia that know they're going to be underwater.
Why does it matter with the subway, though? That's underwater anyway.
No, the water will be in it. That'll be a problem.
Why?
Comes over the city streets.
It comes over the city streets because the water level's rising up. In other words, it's not in theory.
Science.
Oh, that is bad. I'm glad I live in Cali.
We don't have that problem.
You just have it's going to all break off and fall into the ocean.
They've been saying that for years.
Subsidence.
Oh, no. We got the nice weather. You're San Diego.
I'm on the beach.
Come on, we love it.
Absolutely.
We love it. We love L.A. Nobody from the 80s? Century Boulevard, Santa Monica Boulevard. We love. Yeah, nobody should. You used to identify yourself, M. Sturgo says, as a progressive Republican. Do you still consider yourself such, or do you more really identify with the Tea Party now?
I tell you, in the long time I've been going through this stuff, the environmental stuff is really important, was really important. It's continued to be important. And in California, we've made remarkable progress. People don't give enough credit.
Leads the nation, always.
Leads the nation in this stuff. Now, some
Makes
of it gets,
the nation follow us.
and some of it gets a little overboard. I mean, businesses are leaving. We got some problems of balance. But I live on the beach in San Diego, and I love it. We have a height limit. We have some controls on stuff. It's not going to become Miami. We're going to have a nice place for our kids and grandkids and their grandkids. That's the kind of thing that I was committed to and still am. I mean, it makes sense.
So are you a Tea Party person or not?
Now, here's the... I'll get to that. No, the Tea Party thing...
I heard about the beach. I didn't know I went to do with the Tea Party.
The Tea Party...
Are you in the Tea Party? I live on the beach and I love it.
It was a good answer, wasn't it?
Okay. What do you think the Occupy Wall Street movement has accomplished for the middle class? What has it failed to accomplish?
Nothing.
For you.
Wow, that's a great question. You know, the tents are gone, but I think that there's a real debate in this country now about the fact that you can't have an economy where 70% is cut out, and I think that you're going to start to see change. I think that banks are going to be...
Wait, 70?
Well, you can talk 1 or 99, but basically there's a 70%
We got the 47, we got the 99, now we got 70.
The middle class. You can't have the 70% in the middle that are really crunched. You cannot have an economy working without them spending, right? And I think that there's a real discussion about that now. I think that you're going to start to see banks regulated and broken up. I think if Obama gets a second term, you're going to really see people like Gary Gensler, who's maybe going to get the SEC post, go after the banks. I think that you're going to see people start to talk about income-based growth rather than trickle-down stock growth, which isn't working.
Okay, we got to go. Thank you very much, everybody. We will take a week off and see you. Week from Friday. Thank you. All right, we're back here on Overtime on the internet, and we're being joined by the doctor. Are you a real doctor, Frank?
PhD from Oxford.
Really? Oxford?
That's fancy. Mississippi.
I was.
Well played. Well played, Frank.
Affirmative action.
Oh, Frank. Okay. So, okay, this is one for you, Will Kane. Do you think Americans have given terrorism at least some power by letting fear of violence dictate the extent to which our government is willing to criticize? Oh, man, this guy talks like Obama at a debate. Criticize religious leadership in the Middle East. I couldn't follow it either, but what do you think about this?
It's a free speech question.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. You're with me on this one.
Yes,
I know
yes. Christopher Hitchens once said that the offensive speech is the most important to protect. If one guy stands up and he's the heretic in the room and he goes against every other consensus, his opinion becomes the most important. I fully believe that, and when you're speaking about religion, the most.
Do you think this Benghazi Gate thing is anything? I've heard you talk about it on Fox, right?
It's the one thing that you and I agree with. I think we agree, which is that there aren't equal allies in the Middle East. We have one ally, and that ally is Israel, and we should defend it and stand up for it.
That's true. But I mean, I feel like the Republicans, many of them feel like what happened in Benghazi was something that could have been prevented, or that somehow the administration's response to it is corrupt, and I don't know where they're getting that. I mean, yes, they did not know immediately what kind of an attack it was. They thought it might have been a spontaneous uprising on 9/11. What?
Yeah, I'm not buying any of that right there.
What do you think happened?
Within 24 hours, Eli Lake at the Daily Beast has been reporting on this. They knew that 4 terrorists did this. They knew where one of them was. And within a week later, 2 weeks later, Susan Rice was still going out on the Sunday talk show circuit saying it was a spontaneous reaction to that Innocence of Muslims video. They were just propagating something that was not true.
But that proves that what? Obama's a Muslim Brotherhood member?
I didn't say
I'm just asking what it
proves incompetence, negligence, and some form of deception for covering up for the negligence, I guess.
You left out leading from behind.
But what does it say?
Always leading from behind. That's their big.
What does it say that there's a group of people that riot because of a stupid film?
No, we're talking about the attack, not the riot.
Exactly.
It's insane.
Why do we always have to be responsible because they're fucking nuts?
Okay. But if the administration believes, again, back to the earlier comment I made, if they believe that this little video caused that uprising, they should put a halt to the Navy SEALs film that's about to come out.
Right.
Because if you're wanting to light up the Middle East, let him get on that show.
It'll always be something.
It's always something.
Right.
It's always something. And
right.
The interesting thing was that the people in Benghazi then took care of this problem in a certain way, right? Fairly bravely.
Well, I mean, that's what I don't hear on Fox News, that we made Libya our friends. They love us now. We got rid of the bad man, and we made a friend, which we need around the world.
Yeah, but you don't hear that on Fox News because you don't watch Fox News.
I do sometimes watch Fox News, Frank.
Do you ever see the groups I do?
Of course.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Frank, what? How do you think I know to refer to you as evil? Frank, what would you say, here's a question, to the Republican voters who believe that the polls are skewed in favor of the Democrats? Now, I heard this a lot recently, that they think the polls are a liberal conspiracy.
Stop complaining about it. You're going to have good polls, you're going to have bad polls. Focus on the issues, focus on what's going on, focus on what the candidates are saying. And if you're going to blame the polls, then they're going to come back and blame you.
And what do you think about this Rasmussen poll? Because some people say that this guy, who's a conservative pollster, he somehow comes out with polls that don't agree with any of the other polls and have Romney ahead. That he's the one who's...
And yet he was the most accurate. And I've heard the criticism. He was the most accurate in 2008. He had Barack Obama within less than 1% of his actual total in 2008.
You always wonder where the pollsters get their data. I was down 14 points in the Florida race in '92, and I was down 12 and I won by 14, 2 weeks out.
Wow.
So if I read that poll, and I would have gone home and cried.
Why do you think that was?
I just think sometimes they call the same people. Polling data today, mobile phones, telecommunications different than they used to be.
But in '92, there weren't any cell phones.
No.
I mean...
Well, they were about this size.
Yeah, right.
Line up with a satellite.
But, I often wonder about that same thing. The people who are answering the phones are not indicative of the nation. Who answers a land? I don't remember the last time I answered a landline.
And again, you're worried of what's the purpose of the call? What are they doing with the data? So sometimes to get them off, yeah, I support that guy, whoever it is you said. And then once they get you on the phone long enough, the push poll starts. If you knew this about it, what would you do? Pretty soon, you've gone from this popular guy to the piece of dirt, and it's all push polling.
But anyone who's such a lonely, cat-hoarding loser that they would talk to a pollster for 20 minutes on a landline is a typical American voter. That's who that. Okay.
You talked to me tonight.
What's that?
You talked to me tonight.
But Frank, stop. Bill, what one action would make the most immediate positive impact on our environment? Oh, I think I know. Carbon tax, right? A direct carbon tax?
Well, if you're asking, internalizing the externalities, as the economists say, making carbon pay the price for the damage it does, ending the kind of ability of the greatest special break any industry ever got, the fossil fuel industry allowed to pour its waste out for free, that would help. But the only way we're going to get there, if the question is, what's the thing that an ordinary person could do that would help the most, the answer to that is organize. I mean, if we don't build a movement to do this, then it's not going to happen.
Right. Recycling is not going to,
Right. Changing the light bulb is nice, but changing this structure, this system is
I always say
important.
it's like saying we could have won World War II by saving tin. Yes, did people save tin? Did it help? Yes. But it also helped that within 1 year, FDR said, you know what? Yes, there was no more cars made. Everything made, tanks and planes. You know, in 1943, you know how many cars were made in America? 139. Not 139,000, 139 cars. And they were probably all for generals,
But
like big
economics changes this debate. I remember in Florida when gas prices started rising, I was fighting offshore drilling. As soon as gases got to a certain point, everybody said, no, never mind, go ahead and drill. And you'll find that today in California, $5, $5.50. People lose their sentimentality for the environment. They just want oil. So I'm telling you, the economics play a role here where normal people who would have heretofore said, I'm with you, getting rid of fossil fuels, all of a sudden said, just kidding. My Prius at 50 miles a gallon.
But this is what I was trying to ask on the show. What has to happen where that scale tips? Where, I mean, you called it sentimentality. I mean, we have these horrible droughts. I mean, people are, the UN report said 400,000 people worldwide now die every year because of global warming. I mean, you have to have two heads?
Maybe when the presidential candidates show up in Iowa, it's gone. You know,
That's right.
There's nothing to debate.
That's where the first debate is, and it doesn't exist. Mitt Romney's there in a hazmat suit singing God Bless America.
Think of our energy policy. We actually turned corn into fuel. If that isn't the stupidest thing.
It was stupid.
It remains stupid.
Right. And that's because
we can't feed kids, we can't feed the poor and hungry, but we're sitting there.
And that's because the first primary is in Iowa.
Absolutely.
And both candidates have to pander to people who grow corn. All right. Thank you, folks. Thank you, panel. You're great.
Real Time with Bill Maher. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.
All right, and welcome back to Politically Incorrect. My guests are Arsenio Hall and Bobcat Goldthwait, and isn't it great to be back in 1997?
Yes. Where's that?
Oh, look at this old home week for the comics.
It is.
Remember when we were the young comedians?
Yeah.
Oh, what happened?
Sad, really.
Oh.
Now I look like your Dorian Gray painting.
Oh,
you guys were talking about, back in the day, my line on Rodney King was, if you ever see me getting beaten by the police, put the video camera down and help me.
It's a great joke.
Now it'd be the phone, but, they're bringing in the new millennium.
But you have kids, right?
Yes.
And you have a kid? Somebody I know who has a kid said, now that I have a kid, if a guy was driving 100 miles an hour through my neighborhood, I would want the police to wail on him.
Wow.
Well, I mean, kids change you.
Yeah.
Well, if I didn't like my kids...
I'm just saying, that's what somebody said.
That's what somebody said.
I just thought that was interesting from the people with child perspective.
I remember the first time I saw the video, I was like, that brother must have done something. Because they were whipping his ass so vehemently, It was like, I couldn't believe that he hadn't done anything.
Well, he did drive through a neighborhood.
He was going fast.
Yes, he was going fast. I agree. I agree that does not justify beating a man on the ground.
Just give me the ticket.
You had some involvement with that, did you not?
Yeah, it was very interesting from my perspective, learning at the foot of a black man about black people.
How?
Yeah, especially about the history of black people in our country, which is not a sterling history. And to have this happen, and to have George Herbert Walker Bush, then the president, of course, turn to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Powell, and say, we need to do something. We need to federalize the Guard out in California. We need to do something. We need to restore order and so forth. And Powell said, wait a minute. Let me, Mr. President, give you some facts. And they had a really good discussion, and Bush stood down.
That was the old Republican Party.
Yeah, that was the old Republican
They listened to facts. That is a quaint notion.
Bill, could I ask? I'm a huge fan of Colin Powell. What did you learn from him about black people and their history that you didn't know already?
I learned that I had such a void in my historical knowledge of this country from its colonial period to the World War II period that I was ignorant. And he put me in the books, and he put me with the people. I interviewed over 750 World War II veterans. And I kept asking them over and over again, why? Why? Why would you come back to a country that treats you like it does? Why did you fight for this country? And I got the same answer every time. It's my country too. And one day it might live up to its beliefs.
Okay. Here's a question for you from M. Sturgos. What advice would you give a potential candidate who confides he has had an extramarital affair?
Don't admit to it. No, I'm kidding.
Shut up. Is that that's the
Always
advice?
go to the Eddie Murphy Shaggy thing. Wasn't me.
Yeah.
You know?
Remember Shaggy?
Yes, wasn't me.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, just whatever you do, don't lie about it. If you get caught, you've got to fess up. That's the first thing, first and foremost. Because they'll always find out.
If you were John Edwards, would you have fessed up?
At what point? I mean, he had so many opportunities. But yeah, he should have, once he got caught, you come up. Someone's always going to talk. I promise you, there's always someone who's going to talk.
You know what we don't have very much conversation in this country about? What a great family man we have in the Oval Office right now.
Yes.
I mean, with Barack Obama, there's no honky tonk. There's no side stories. There's you never
have to talk if you get rid of the honky.
There's no garbage. There's no crap. I mean,
he has to be the Jackie Robinson of politics, as I always say. Because if he makes one wrong move, this experiment with the black president, as we were talking about, is over.
If there had been a Shaquita someplace on the south side of Chicago,
do you really think that the people that President Obama motivated back in 2008? I mean, the youth vote came out. I think a lot of young people didn't see color when they voted for President Obama. I think there were people that did, but the group that he motivated, and this is why the Democrats got behind him instead of Hillary, seriously, because he could bring in a whole new generation of young people and get them into the political process where they thought demographically Hillary really couldn't do that.
And that's the problem with the Republican Party, is that they're not embracing change, and they're not getting younger people in that are much more aware and much more
outside of the wealthy, you don't want anybody. You don't want women. You don't want the young people. You don't want students.
If I get back to the question, I mean, conversely, I mean, Sarah Palin, famously at the convention, had a pregnant daughter.
Yeah.
You know, or I guess was she pregnant?
She lost.
She had the baby.
Newt Gingrich.
Oh no, the girl was with child.
Yes.
Okay. We cannot
by the way,
really
in the
picture
ghetto in the barbershop, it's like, you know that's Sarah's baby, bro. You know, but
yes.
I just got to keep you in touch with the barbershop.
But conversely, can we really, even in America, picture if Barack Obama had the similar situation, if his daughter was pregnant? I mean, it just is inconceivable that America would accept that as they did with Sarah Palin. So that's so much for your post-racial America, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
President Obama said the kids are off limits.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
but we're also just used to seeing hillbillies pregnant. It's not that weird.
That's right.
It's really.
So true.
You don't even see it, you know.
That's right. That's right.
There's an uncle dad somewhere.
Right, exactly.
One of the reasons I wasn't going to vote for Jesse, because I didn't want a first lady and a first baby's mama in the White House, you know, and you know what he was going through at that time.
Right, exactly.
So Obama, I'm incredibly proud of his past, his present, and I'm looking forward to his future.
Right. I am too. Okay, Colonel Wilkinson, are you concerned with neoconservatives' resurgence in the Republican Party and the calls to attack Iran?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see some of the same people making some of the same statements. They're even reading off the same sheet of music, John Bolton and others. This is another war in Western Asia for the United States would be catastrophic. And the president, very bravely, courageously, defying people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham and other stalwarts of my party, has started down a negotiating track that has every reason to succeed if people just let him do it.
Isn't it funny that, in a way, the Obama method is sort of the opposite of the Powell Doctrine, which was overwhelming force?
Decisive force.
Okay, but Obama seems to use the least amount, like to get Libya, to get Gaddafi, $1 billion as opposed to $1 trillion to get Saddam Hussein. The Somali pirates, Newt Gingrich said, let's invade. No, a couple of snipers took him out, drones, you know, the Bin Laden raid. He seems to do what Mitt Romney loves in business, be super efficient.
Yeah.
I won't dispute that, but I will say that that's a dangerous road to walk down if you're not closing the door. And what I mean by that is Libya is still a huge question. Afghanistan is still a huge question. Iraq is still a huge question. Right now, Syria is blowing up, and Maliki, on the one hand, is funding one side of Syria. Muqtada al-Sadr is funding another side of Syria. So this kind of delicate Democrat gradual response walking into Vietnam is not necessarily the best. I stick with Powell.
Gosh, back in the 90s, fellas, blowing up meant get popular, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, we're going to go enjoy a reminiscence backstage.
Yeah. Oh, this is over?
This is over. Yeah, we're way over. We're just having it too good of a time.
This isn't even on TV.
Yeah, this isn't even on TV. This is the internet.
My publicist is fired.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Real Time with Bill Maher. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.
What do you feel is the biggest threat to our national security today? And how would you grade the Obama administration's anti-terrorism performance?
I think they've done a great job on anti-terrorism.
So A?
Oh, yeah, A+.
Oh, A+.
But that doesn't mean there's no more threat. That doesn't mean there's no more threat. You know, people say he shouldn't take credit for what he's done. But I'll tell you, if something blows up, they're going to blame him. So he should take credit for what he's done, because he will also be blamed if it doesn't work.
Okay. Jay Madera says, why don't we go back to Reagan times when the wealthy paid a lot more in taxes?
Well,
did they?
Well, okay, it depends whether Reagan had a top marginal tax rate of 28%. We're at 35
And how many times did Reagan
up to 45? He signed too many tax increases. And the good news is we've learned from 82, which was the significant one, when the Democrats offered him $3 of spending cuts for every dollar of tax increase. The tax increase is real. We're still paying it. And none of the spending cuts actually happened. They doubled spending rather than $2 of spending cuts for every dollar of tax increase.
And Bill, the real problem is that the very, very wealthiest people in America now have these devices where they don't pay any taxes. Remember the McCourts who owned the Dodgers didn't pay any taxes, state or federal, for 7 years, I believe. If you are very, very wealthy now, Wall Street has come up with products that will allow you to live tax-free. If you're a billionaire.
So you should check into that.
I am not.
First, you need $1 billion.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, Eva, this is for you. The African-American community tends to be more conservative on the gay issue. What do you think the Latino response will be to Obama coming out for gay marriage? Yeah, why do the minorities hate on the gays?
No, we don't hate it. First of all, to generalize about the Latino view is really irresponsible because we're a faction group. But
Because the Bible.
Because we're Catholic. A lot of us are Catholic. A huge majority are Catholic. But what's interesting is the study just came out that said Latinos don't take that issue to the polls. That's like 400th on their list.
Actually, most people don't take that issue to the polls.
Right. It's not a
people tend to vote on kitchen table issues, fiscal issues, national security issues, social issues last. And this was even proved in the Bush administration,
right, and it's
in the
not
Bush re-election campaign.
Latinos are not a conservative or not for it. And also, if you look at the demographic of Latinos, we're the youngest ethnicity in the United States, and we're only getting younger. And being young is indicative of being more accepting and tolerant of alternate lifestyles.
But if it wasn't for religion, it wouldn't be an issue at all.
Right.
Well, I mean, it really does come from religion. It really, I mean, it's you know.
In North Carolina, it was through the black churches. I haven't seen an analysis of other states, but that's also where you'd want to do your voter turnout. So there's a little bit of a conflict there that Obama's going to run into.
What does the panel think of J.P. Morgan losing $2 billion doing the same risky investing that caused the 2008 crash?
I love that question, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, go ahead.
When George W. Bush's administration bailed out Wall Street and started the bailout of Detroit, when they bailed out Wall Street, nothing changed. Nobody lost money on their bets. The executives still get paid the same way. We still don't have Glass-Steagall.
Nothing has changed except we've given them a lot of our tax dollars. When the Obama administration bailed out the auto industry, everybody took a haircut. The shareholders got wiped out. The CEO and the janitor both took haircuts.
The UAW
and the
took a major haircut.
Yes, they did.
Disproportionately,
And
the secured bondholders didn't do
those were
nearly as
health care
well
claims.
as
No, they
UAW.
didn't. But everybody took a haircut, and the executives who had deferred compensation lost half that money. Everybody took a loss. That's the difference about how the two administrations treated it.
I think the real thing here with J.P. Morgan is, the Republicans in the House said we don't need more regulation. Dodd-Frank wasn't necessary. This is proof Dodd-Frank was necessary. They're still doing all the stuff they were doing in 2008.
Dodd-Frank is the law of the land, and this happened. How did Dodd-Frank fix it?
Because it hasn't been implemented.
Because it hasn't been implemented.
That's right.
It hasn't been implemented.
Right.
We've been regulating.
Dodd-Frank does not address fiscal credit default swaps adequately. It doesn't address.
Why doesn't it? Why doesn't it?
Yes.
Because the Republicans in the House wouldn't allow them to do that in the bill.
Right.
Dodd-Frank passed when the Democrats had a majority in the House. No Republicans had any ability to have any influence.
But the bankers who produce 40% of the profits in this country now have enormous influence in Washington. We have been regulating banking since Hammurabi. Okay? And we knew how to regulate banking up until we decided, starting in 1980, with a series of acts to stop regulating bankers. You got to regulate banking. It is the crucial central industry you have to regulate. There are a lot of things we can get rid of regulation, not finance. Because you get unlimited damage.
Except evidently Fannie and Freddie.
Right.
Who were forced by and pushed into buying when they weren't buying toxic mortgages, and they were criticized by Wall Street. Wall Street said, they're not buying these things. They're going to lose market share. So they started buying them. And you look at the Financial Crisis Industry Commission report, inquiry report, and it shows they acted much better than anybody on Wall Street.
Is there any amount of income inequality that is bad? Any amount?
Well, the question is why you have it. I mean, if you have income inequality because the government's got programs that keep poor people poor. I mean, the Davis-Bacon Act was originally passed to keep African Americans out of government jobs. The Davis-Bacon Act.
Well,
Hammurabi.
I know more about Hammurabi than I know about
Davis-Bacon is in law now. Hammurabi's passed away. But that's a law that was deliberately set up for reasons of protecting organized labor against black workers, and it makes...
What year was this law passed?
Late 1920s.
Yeah.
Oh, the 20s.
It's still law of the land.
It's still law of the land. It requires a minimum wage.
Democrats keep voting for it.
And Grover's right. There were some racist aspects to it, but it was also...
They set it on the floor of the Senate and the House when they passed it.
But its function has also been to take blue-collar workers like my brother, who's a ditch digger, and see to it that they got a living wage, which most Americans don't have now. And by the way, the problem with inequality... People should be paid according to the merits of how well they work and their success, but what we're doing in this country is taking massive amounts of tax dollars and quietly funneling them up to the richest people in America. That's the real problem with inequality. It's a government policy creating people who didn't earn the money.
Yeah, any government program that takes money from someone and hands it to someone else is suspect. Sure.
How is the ditch digging industry going?
Pretty bad. And by the time you're my brother's age, he's 60, you're busted up and you can't work anymore. Nobody will hire you. They want young people.
Right, but Americans aren't taking those jobs. We'll need the Mexicans.
Go ahead.
Well, I went and talked to one of the guys responsible for defending the Davis-Bacon Act, and he was saying, please help us raise taxes to do more of this stuff. And I said, instead of raising taxes, how about getting rid of your Davis-Bacon, which keeps the cost up 25 to 33%. His response was, do you want all our highways built by Hispanics? So the good news is that this disgusting racist law is still a disgusting racist law. They just have a different target. That's your government at work.
But of all the problems we have in America...
It's a major problem and we could fix it. Why? I would think you'd be out there going, yes, let's get rid of something like that.
Maybe I am.
Okay, good.
Since I've never heard
we got rid of farm subsidies and Davis-Bacon so far today.
Davis-Bacon, believe me, it's going to be on my breakfast table tomorrow morning. Bacon, no. Davis-Bacon, that's what I want to hear about. But of all the things, is this really the top priority? You seem so worked up about Davis-Bacon.
Well, it's a major injustice and it's wrong. And if you wonder why your roads aren't very well built,
middle class.
I'm sorry, higher wages lead to worse roads? That's a difficult stretch.
But
no, what Davis-Bacon does is it raises the cost of all building of roads and all building of bridges and so
less
on.
workers are more efficient because they're paid more.
But in the big picture, Grover, like I just read this week that corporate profits are finally back to their pre-recession levels, 15% of GDP, and yet they have given no money to raising wages, nothing to reinvesting. It looks like maybe they, along with the Republican Congress, want to keep a sluggish economy so that black people...
The median wage in this country has fallen.
Isn't that a bigger issue to you than Davis-Bacon? I mean,
look,
I am all over Davis-Bacon from now on.
Free market advocates pointed out that if you threaten the economy with taxes and regulations, as has been done, people will not invest in the economy. People are investing outside the United States more. We ought to have a better atmosphere here for investment and job creation, and then both the companies that have money here and foreigners should be investing in our country. You're talking about immigrants won't come to this country. They're not sending their money either.
I am all over that. All right, we're out of time. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you coming. Thank you, panel.
Real Time with Bill Maher. Ask Bill and his guests your questions right after the show at HBO.com.
1001 Trump fat jokes. Would you like to hear some? Okay. Trump's so fat, most of the voices in his head are chewing. He's fat. Nobody says it, but he's fat. He gets winded riding the escalator. The same guys he sent to get Obama's birth certificate are now looking for his dick. Who is he fat? He once bragged that he moved like a bitch on Mrs. Butterworth. Oh. It's a book I have. Bestseller. The banks want to break him up. What? His Secret Service code name is Chris Christie. All right. Let's bring out Annabelle. She is an actress and New York Times best-selling author whose newest book is Wherever You Go, There They Are. Stories about my family you might relate to. My friend Annabelle Gurwitch. Annabelle, oh, good. I don't. I hate him because he shoots fucking lions. Anyway... But this picture made me realize that he's actually kind of an introspective guy. And I didn't realize it. He wrote a book called Kind of an Introspective Guy. And I'm going to read some of the passages. For example, before I touched it, this tree was alive. Now look at it. That's the power of a Trump. When I look at people, I don't see white, black, brown, or red. I see a chauffeur, a cook, a gardener, and a drunk trying to stop daddy from oil drilling. When I gaze up at the stars, I'm struck with a sense of the divine that I almost forget I'm being blown in a convertible. Newell, the illustrator of this children's book, My Parents' Open Carry, has to tell me what the dad in this picture, Freddie Mercury apparently, is doing with his hand. Also, if mom and dad are both safe because they're packing, why are they using their daughter as a human shield? There were Andrew Walls, who works at a Delaware surgical center and went in for a colonoscopy and awoke from anesthesia to find he was wearing women's pink panties. Because his coworkers thought it would be a funny prank, and who was now suing his coworkers for intentional infliction of severe mental stress, has to admit he is kind of acting like a pink panty pussy.
Well, the woman in the audience who threw a shoe yesterday at Hillary Clinton has to tell us what she was thinking. After all, this is Mrs. Bill Clinton. If there's one thing she's used to, it's dodging a pump. New rule, the Arizona woman who placed an ad on Craigslist looking to have sex with a horse has to apologize to horses. Also to Arizona, women, Craigslist, and of course, McLovin. New rule, just once a Sherpa has to throw their bag at the foot of a wealthy American adventure seeker and say, "You carry it up there, you lazy piece of shit." I'm going back down to catch the last 10 minutes of Game of Thrones. Call me. Terrible. Neural, now that she's gone, America must take a moment to remember Shirley Temple Black and try to forget Black Shirley Temple. I've offended them again. New rule, the people who say the most uncomfortable they've ever felt witnessing a kiss was when Michael Sam shared this moment with his boyfriend have to admit they're purposely forgetting the 2000 Democratic National Convention. And all you tough guys out there have to admit you're fine with a man-on-man kiss as long as it means I'm going to kill you. New rule, the confusing clear history button on web browsers must be renamed to reflect what it actually means. I'm done whacking off. Well, baristas have to find a better use for their Masters of Fine Arts degree than drawing pictures in my latte. Coffee is a drug. It doesn't require cute pictures to make people want it. Never once has a Coke dealer laid out lines in the shape of Hello Kitty. New rule, the producers of the new TV show Rising Star have to admit that anyone in America with any talent at all has already appeared on one of the other TV talent shows. Unless one of those 8-year-olds who just crossed the Mexican border can carry a tune, I think we're tapped out. New rule, amid his troubles, we must all at least give Chris Christie credit for this. He said he wanted to drop 115 unwanted pounds, and he did. New rule, Haley Joel Osment has to admit that in addition to seeing dead people, he also sees cake. New rule, just because you plop your kid down in front of an iPad instead of a TV doesn't mean you're not a bad parent. Although, I must say, damned if it doesn't work. Kids in restaurants these days, silent. Kids at the grocery store, comatose. On the plane, zombies. Sure, you're saddling them with the future of attachment disorders and ADHD, but look on the bright side. You couldn't afford college anyway. New rule, if you invested all your money in virtual currency, don't be surprised when it virtually disappears. Who could have predicted this? Virtually everyone. Yes, the internet's biggest Bitcoin exchange collapsed after hackers stole all the Bitcoins. Oh no, and I was saving for a unicorn. You know, I'm not a big fan of Citibank, but I trusted more than 3 guys in a basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. New rule, whatever country this photo was taken in has to let me do acid there. I'm not even sure this is a country. I think it might be gay heaven. Finally, new rule, conservatives must be told that President Obama saying he wouldn't let any son of his play pro football is not controversial. It's common sense, like telling your kids not to play in traffic. But on the right, any critique of our holy religion football is blasphemy because real men don't point out facts or consider consequences, and brain injuries are fun. That's what makes a Terry Bradshaw such a character. And a Sarah Palin interview so entertaining. Now that shocked Fruit Loop lovers have learned that all Fruit Loops, no matter what color, are the same flavor.
Wait!
They are? Someone must explain gently to them that Fruit Loops don't contain any fruit either.
It's been a sad evening.
And that the word fruit isn't spelled with two O's. Oh, hell, let's call Fruit Loops what they really are, gay Cheerios. And finally, new rule, Americans must take the rest of the summer to contemplate the fact that we get far less vacation time than any other civilized country, which is maybe why on the World Happiness Index, we're down at number 17. Have you ever wondered, for example, why every Australian you meet is 20 times happier than you've ever been? I have never met a single Aussie who wasn't the life of the party, and I think I figured out why. They don't have jobs. They just travel and drink and try to steal your girlfriend. In fact, I think Australia is just one giant pyramid scheme and... Stop. Wait. I need a vacation too. And finally, new rule, don't make me go back to my old title. Anybody here remember the 90s? The 90s, people? Okay. It was a crazy time, and I had a show called Politically Incorrect. Because, thank you. Because back then, political correctness had gotten so out of hand. I mean, blacks became African Americans, Mexicans became Latinos, and Indians became casino owners. Broken homes became dysfunctional families, bums became the homeless, crazy people became Fox News reporters. Oh, and it was a tough time for comics. One young comedian even got into big trouble for saying the word chink. These scientists who conducted a 6-year study of 2 male bears and found that one performed fellatio on the other multiple times per day. Must admit that after the first year, they were just watching because they liked it. I'm no scientist, but I think after watching bear blowjobs for a month or so, I'd be like, yeah, they're definitely blowing each other, and get on with my life. Plus, you guys should have kept that fun fact to yourself, because when a bear approaches, we want campers to run. And while we're at it, now that we know that bears give head, the Chicago Bears must change their logo. New rule, Kraft Foods does not need to recall the 96,000 pounds of hot dogs they are recalling because the ingredients on the package were mislabeled. They're hot dogs. If we read the ingredients, we wouldn't buy them to begin with. If the ingredients were feathers, lawn fertilizer, and ground up fingers of illegal immigrants who work at the plant, and they are, Americans would still have only one question. If I cut it up, can I feed it to the baby? New and Jerry must admit the real reason they introduced their new core ice cream with chocolate and vanilla and a column of fudge in the middle was to taunt Republicans. It is everything they fear about Obama. Half dark, half white, but really dark at the core. But to be fair, they also have a flavor to taunt Hillary. Oh, your burger can't be taller than Pharrell Williams' hat. Introducing Jake's Wayback Burger's new 9-patty burger called the Triple Triple. Triple bypass is more like it. Hey, if I want to see 9 patties with soggy buns, I'll go to Riverdance. New rule, stop saying it's a black thing you wouldn't understand. I have yet to hear a black thing that I don't understand. Neck tattoos, purple drank, the phrase turned up, I understand it all. Until today, when I found out Steve Harvey has his own dating site called Delightful.com. Finally, a black thing I don't understand. Speaking of which, new rule, let's agree to drop this "we're going to pursue ISIS to the gates of hell" talk. I get weirded out when Biden starts talking like a character in The Expendables. Besides, threatening jihadists with hell just gets them hornier. It's like threatening a dog with bacon.
Are there any Italians in ISIS?
You're saying Italian ISIS?
Italian ISIS.
There you go. It was laying there.
Yeah. Somebody had to do that joke.
Well, Star Wars fans can't freak out about the news this week that the next installment will be set 30 years after the original. You gotta learn to accept that people get older. Dashing smuggler Han Solo is now... He's now smuggling generic Lipitor from Canada. And boyish Luke Skywalker is having trouble keeping his lightsaber up. And lovable robot R2-D2 is tired of living a lie. You're on a roll, sure. But you can't put a bumper sticker on your car just because your kid showed up for school. Talk about lowering the bar. What's next? One that says, "My child never got lice at Burbank Elementary." "My child ate all of his tater tots at Wellington Middle School." "My child never brought my gun to school and shot his classmates at Belmont High." Well, the Central African Republic, right after they finish fighting their civil war, must come up with a better name for their country. It's like if we named Kansas Central Flat State. Also, Mad Dog, a Christian rioter who ate a Muslim cab driver in the Central African Republic this week, has to blame himself the next time he can't get a cab. What kind of Christian eats a man's body and blood? I mean, Jesus Christ, you're worse than that nun. And finally, new rule, crazy idea division. Since there's an election coming up, Democrats might want to say something about what they're proposing to do for America sometime between now and November. Crazy idea. Everyone is predicting disaster for Democrats in the midterms, and their response seems to be, yeah, sucks to be us right now. Well, maybe that's because their basic talking points always start with an apology. Like, Obamacare is far from perfect, but nothing's perfect. But you don't start with pointing that out about something you're supposed to like. Hey, Bob, how's your wife? Well, she's not perfect, but she beats masturbating alone. And finally, new rule, Tea Party people have to explain something to me. I know you can't stand the unemployed, those takers who don't work. But if you're the hard workers, why do you all have so much time to listen to talk radio in the middle of the day? I mention this because last week brought the news that powerful Republican Congressman Mike Rogers was leaving the House to join an already long list of conservative radio hosts that includes Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Laura Ingraham, Michael Savage, Monica Crowley, Dennis Prager, Herman Cain. I could go on. But who could blame you for thinking, geez, aren't there enough right-wing radio hosts as it is? No, never. There are never enough. Why? Because the Tea Party always has room for one more voice. If you're going to get the world's smallest man together with the world's tallest man, come on, they have to do a buddy cop movie. How has this not happened already? They're police detectives who don't want to work with each other because the tall one can't fit in the squad car and the little one is too old for this shit. And one of them is dating Mila Kunis. Sprinkle in some awkward high fives, and come summer, we'll be juggling popcorn statues at the MTV Movie Awards. New rule, authorities have to explain why this 63-year-old Michigan man arrested on child porn charges hadn't already been arrested on child. And LA hipsters have to explain why, if they're so hip, this 63-year-old pervert is dressed exactly like you. There were the woman who posted this picture of a fishing trophy on Reddit, claiming it looks like a penis, is, well, she's right. She's right. That looks like a dick. I'm sorry. But the important thing to remember is whether a man is showing you his penis or the fish he just caught. Your job is the same, to pretend you can't believe how big it is. Now that former Navy SEAL Robert O'Neill has admitted to being the man who shot Osama bin Laden, he has to tell us what badass action movie quip he delivered right before he shot him. And please, Bob, if you didn't say something like that, just make it up. Tell us you raised your rifle, spit out some chaw, and said, "Tell the virgins I said hello." And finally, new rule, it's great to be back. Thank you for welcoming us back for another year. We appreciate you having us in your home. And as we start a new year, let's start a new tradition, a good tradition, to replace one of our stupid traditions, like the Electoral College or the drug war. Let's make it a tradition that just as individuals make New Year's resolutions, so should America. Barack Obama must fire whoever decided that his wife's big cause as First Lady should be sharecropping. New rule, someone has to tell this little girl, that's not the lady who wrote Harry Potter. New rule, marine biologists have to hurry up and identify this mysterious tentacled sea creature before Chris Christie breads it, deep fries it, and eats it. New rule, instead of the Winter Olympics having both the luge, where people ride down the ice feet first, and the skeleton, where people ride down the ice face first, they must be merged into one event called Sledding 69. now that they've wrestled his approval rating down to the basement and grabbed both houses of Congress, Republicans must explain why this guy keeps kicking your ass. It's like one of those action movies where you tie the hero up and chain him to a chair, and then he headbutts you unconscious and gets up and leaves a note signed Django.
Not Django.
Now that we know that cured Ebola patients can have infectious semen for months afterwards, Trojan must come out with a hazmat condom. Because there's nothing more annoying than having a one-night stand and waking up with AIDS and Ebola. New rule, as long as the U.S. is helping to train the army in Chad, let's start by toning down the choreography. Unless you're a rockette, this high-leg kicking business never ends well. A black man who can kick that high shouldn't be on maneuvers in Africa. He should be on tour with Britney. New rule, just number your damn elevator buttons like everybody else. I want to get back to my room, not do a word jumble. Besides, Beyonce's sister is beating the shit out of me, and I can't even get the door open. Man, this doesn't look like something that happened right after a visit to the opera. Looks like Maury Povich just told her the test came back. New rule, someone has to have a stern talking to with the Iraqi colonel who said, "I am as broken and ashamed as a bride who is not a virgin on her wedding night," when his unit got overrun by rebels. Colonel, that's not really a fair analogy. A bride who's not a virgin at least knows what she's doing. And she hangs in there until the shooting stops. You, my friend, are more like the groom who couldn't get it up. Well, now that I've seen the video of the woman in New York City being harassed over 100 times a day, scientists must explain why the men with the most self-confidence are always the ones with the least to offer. Hey, baby, you want to come back to my place? It's that dumpster right over there. I'll let you have a sip of whatever is in this can I found. New rule, the people of Malaysia have to consider the possibility that maybe transportation isn't their thing. Come on, this is getting out of control. Your planes are missing, your ferry boats are sinking, and all the sharks in the area are like, "Ugh, I'm full." New rule, Republicans have to stop saying that all those Central American kids we're detaining. To prove we have to secure the border. The border is secure. How do you think we caught all those damn kids? Finally, new rule, and this one goes out especially to Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, who's a big fan, by the way, never misses the show, loves new rules. This one's for you, Al. When you don't give people a seat at the table, they tend to want to blow up the table. Photobombing is officially over. Oh, it was fun for a while, but now I think I speak for all Americans when I say, get the hell out of my picture, ass face. New rule, I'll stop saying there's no whiter sport than hockey. There is, curling. When people who aren't white do curling, it's called mopping the floor. New rule, someone must tell Johnny Weir, more ice and less capades. If I want to see something that gay on ice, I'll order a daiquiri. And I think the same thing when I see Democrats these days. You two also need to work together so you can stop the greatest supervillain of all time, Orange Crush. In conclusion, I would just like to say that Donald Trump is actually the perfect candidate for today's Republicans because he does, that his two favorite books are the Bible and The Art of the Deal. Trump says one is about a perfect God who teaches humanity the right way to live, and the other is the Bible.